Cultural History Community Interest Company was formed in 2018, and our objective is to provide benefit to people interested in the cultural history of their neighbourhoods and families, particularly but not exclusively in Luton. Our first 4 projects were all inspired by the centenary of the 1919 Luton peace riots, which resulted in the local community burning down the town hall. We commissioned 4 projects: an oral history project, which included republishing the book Where They Burnt Down the Town Hall, a music project, a schools project, and an art installation. The oral history project. Here we captured 12 family stories from people who had a connection to the peace riots, all of which can be heard on our website at www.culturalhistories.org. We republished the authoritative historical work telling the story of the peace riots, Where They Burnt Down the Town Hall, written by local historian Dave Craddock. The book design was completed by 2 students from the School of Art and Design at the University of Bedfordshire. The school project consisted of developing with the Chiltern Learning Trust classroom learning material on the concept of citizenship using the story of the peace riots. The art installation project, working with the School of Art and Design of the University of Bedfordshire and Bushmead Primary School, an art installation was created with a theme of protest around climate change. The music project. We commissioned a song telling the story of the peace riots. The song, We're a Jolly Lot of Fellows, was learnt and performed by 800 Luton school children. In this video, the words are spoken by the composer Richard Sisson. The children are singing the chorus. The photos are taken from the book Where They Burnt Down the Town Hall.
The Peace Day Riots in Luton, July 1919. Somebody somewhere knows the what, the who, the when, the why, the how it all kicked off that rainy weekend in July. A peace day, nationwide, was planned to honour those across the land, loyal men who'd sworn an oath to serve, to fight, to die. A joyful celebration after 4 long years of war, a time to hymn the heroes, heal the wounds so red and raw. But here in Luton, what went wrong? Voices proud weren't raised in song. Let us ask some questions, we have to find out more. How decent men who'd served the cause, unflinching, brave and bold, a generation's valour pledged and then for poppies sold. From crowd to mob that night were turned. A torch was lit, the town hall burned. 100 years have passed, and yet the stories must be told. Don't forget to remember, as the pages of history turn. Don't forget to remember, or none of us ever will learn. Somebody somewhere knows the truth and where to lay the blame. For history to be satisfied, it helps to have a name. But hindsight shows it isn't fair to single out the hapless mayor. It wasn't him alone behind this sorry day of shame. The council played their doubtful part, so too the stern town clerk. A service for ex-soldiers rashly banned in Wardown Park. And those men too were so divided, who should march, quite undecided. Protestations, doubts and fears on history made their mark. A children's medal would be struck, a presentation made to those who, orphaned by the war, might march in the parade. But when the date was rearranged, these plans were ditched, the schedule changed, the youngsters left abandoned, and a nation's debt unpaid. Don't forget to remember, as the pages of history turn. Don't forget to remember, or none of us ever will learn. The war might have been over, the bruising battle won, Tommies home as heroes having thrashed the dreaded Hun. But life demobbed was hard, unjust. Men couldn't earn an honest crust. Being back in Blighty, broke, was not exactly fun. Supplies of food were rationed. For the poor, queues down the street, there was talk of profiteering by an upper-class elite. In the larder, empty shelves. Families couldn't feed themselves. A mayor's feast for Peace Day, then, at best was bittersweet. No surprise around the town, an air of bleak disquiet, such thoughtless public flaunting of the greedy rich man's diet. Ration books were set alight, burning brightly through the night, flaming coupons all ablaze, fueling the riot. If you want to find old Impey, I know where he is, I know where he is, I know where he is. If you want to find old Impey, I know where he is. He's hanging on the old town hall. I've seen him, hanging on the old town hall. Somebody somewhere threw the first stone. Somebody made a first stand. Who was the lawless someone who found that first brick in their hand? All along George Street, windows were smashed. Firemen were threatened. Their hoses were slashed. At least in the carnage, nobody died as the flames of defiance were fanned. The garage, Hart's Motors, for petrol was raided as trouble began to unfold. Pianos from Music Shop, Farmer & Co. onto rubble-strewn pavements were rolled. Umbrellas, some perfume, odd slippers, a book. These were the spoils the rioters took, looting and fighting and bawling out songs as the worst of the chaos took hold. Soldiers brave returning, lives on hold and no one earning, passions high and unrest churning. Town officials still not learning, kept those home fires stoked and burning. The town's public clock, in a shower of sparks, struck its last midnight and fell. In honour of lives lost in earlier wars, no longer would sound that proud bell. And how, in the midst of this dire, joyless strife, how can we search out some lesson for life, when here in our town records tell that this was a night of fire, brimstone and hell? Don't forget to remember as the pages of history turn. Don't forget to remember, or none of us ever will learn. Don't forget to remember, in the past our tomorrows are set. Don't forget to remember. Remember not to forget.
The Historic Building Project. Here we researched 3 Luton buildings, each with a varied history, and captured family stories from local people with a connection. Working with local primary schools, we have used the research and recorded interviews to introduce Luton's heritage to a new generation of young Lutonians. The buildings were the Gurdwara in Cardigan Street, the Islamic Centre at 116 Bury Park Road, and Chapel Langley School. 116 Bury Park Road was built in the late 1800s. It was initially used as a builder's factory until 1914, when it was converted into a propeller factory to supply propellers to the Royal Flying Corps, the forerunner of the RAF fighting in France during World War I. After the war, the building was idle until 1921, when it was converted into an 800-seat Art Deco cinema. The cinema closed in 1938. The next use was to convert the cinema into a synagogue by the local Jewish community. In 2000, the building was sold to a local Islamic community who converted the building into its current use as an Islamic centre. You will now see interviews from local people who have a connection to the buildings over the last 100 years. Firstly, let's introduce Mrs. Ros Scott and her memories of going to the cinema in Bury Park Road in the 1930s.
My name is Ros Scott, and I was born in Luton, Hampton Road, 1920. When I'm 100 years old, it was a long time ago, very long time. And I think it was my eldest sister that was 10 years older than me who took me to the cinema. And I saw Laurel and Hardy. And I can't remember the name of the film, but I know there was a train going along, and I think Laurel and Hardy fell off, which we thought was funny as as children. And he's running after the train, the fat one, Laurel, with his shirt hanging out, trying to hang on to this train. And we were all roaring with laughter in the cinema. And the other one that I can remember, I can't remember quite what the film was about, was Charlie Chaplin. And he had suede feet with big shoes, and he always carried a rolled up umbrella which he twiddled on his hand. You know the thing then, Charlie Chaplin, and it was black and white, no talking.
Okay.
It was all just funny actions which we laughed at and thought it was great.
Now listen to Sid Ruckstein, an elder from the local Hebrew community.
I'm an elder of the Luton Jewish community. There are two elders, the other one's older than me. So I've got a lot of connections with Luton Synagogue, Luton Hebrew congregation, and particularly with the building that used to be the synagogue at 116 Berry Park Road. When the Second World War started, a lot of people were evacuated, moved out from the big cities, particularly London, and a lot of them finished up in Luton. So that the number of people in Luton went from 25 families to about 2,000 people, 2,000 Jewish people in Luton. The result was that the decision was made at the end of the war to look for a bigger building. And in 1949, the Empire Cinema at 116 Berry Park Road was purchased, and work was done to convert it. It wasn't actually opened until 1953, nearly 4 years later. And by that time, a lot of the people who had moved out from London and other places because of the Second World War had actually gone and were no longer in the town. So there were about 200 people. Over a period of time, the number of Jewish people living in Luton reduced, so that there weren't 200 anymore. There were then, by the year 2000, there were only about 130 or 140 Jewish people. And the synagogue was too big. So in 2000, we sold, just after 2000, the year 2000, we sold the building, and it became the Islamic Cultural Centre, which was a good use for it, continued the religious use. And that was the end of our connection with 116 Berry Park Road. It had been a very successful connection from 1949, when it was purchased, to the year 2000, when it was sold. And so over 50 years of use, and it served the Jewish people in Luton very, very well.
And finally, listen to Mahmoud Shah from the Islamic Centre.
Hi, my name is Mahmoud Shah. I'm affectionately known as Mumsy. I work here at the Luton Islamic Centre on Berry Park Road in Luton, and my role here is an outreach worker. My job is about making sure that within the centre and all of the social media outlets, that I propagate the authentic Islam that the center adheres to. So we have been here in this current building since 2001. Historically, we started above a commercial building on Dunstable Road, where we were there from the mid-90s up to 2000, 2001. And that particular space became too small for our congregation. And our senior member of the congregation made contact with the rabbi of the current Islamic center at that time, the synagogue on Bury Park Road. And the rabbi had indicated to our senior that they were thinking of relocating, and they wanted to give this particular building that we now reside in to a faith-based organization rather than a commercial business. So what we've done is that we started a fundraising campaign in early 2001, and we managed to secure the funding, and we moved here in that year.
Chapel Langley School. Now let's hear from Shirley Hobbs about her and her mother's experiences of attending Chapel Langley School.
My name is Shirley Hobbs, and I'm going to tell you something about what it was like when I was at school. Now, I was at school a very long time ago because I'm already a grandma. So you've got to imagine your grandmas being at school. And I went to the Chapel Street School. And so I started at that school, at Chapel Street School, in the infant side of the school, which is still there, on the corner of Russell Street and Farley Hill. And I went into there when I was 5 years old. The sort of things we did, we all sat in a row, we sat in the same room, the classroom. We didn't go to other classes for any lessons, but what we did do was go outside in the playground. In the classroom, well, we had some of the lessons that you would have now, but very different, because we had to sit at our desks, all in rows, and then teacher would teach from the front. We had reading and writing, and sums, didn't call it arithmetic then. All our writing was done by pencil only, lead pencils made of wood, a bit like this. We didn't have pens or ink because they thought that we were too little to use ink. I know we did when I got older, but not in this infant school. And we also had crayons to colour, and there's some of the crayons there to do our colouring. So they did allow us to do some colouring. Yeah. So it's nice to know that my mum also went to that school. So we're now talking of such a long time ago, nearly 100 years ago, when my mum went to that school. She lives in the town centre. And when I was looking for my stuff about the school, now she was a bit older than me when she was there, but this is one of her books that I found with her writing in. So this wouldn't be an infant school, this would be, and she had to do her spelling lessons, and this is some of her writing of her words she had to spell. Oh dear, that was in ink. You can tell that's ink writing, and it says on the front, from the borough of Luton. That was the people who owned the school then, the council, which is another word for the council. And it looks to me as though it was one big book that the teacher had cut in strips like this, so each child could have a book of their own. The teacher wasn't very pleased with my mum's writing, so she put here, I do not like this form of writing. I think that's what she put. I do not like this style of writing. Well, it looks very good to me.
My name's Michael McMahon, and in this video I will be providing you with a brief history of the uses of 31 Cardigan Street. So the backstory to 31 Cardigan Street, it was originally built in the late 1800s. And although it has had 3 separate uses over the years, it's always been a place of worship for different congregations and faiths. Firstly, it was a Methodist chapel from around 1896 to 1950. Then a Welsh Congregationalist church or chapel from 1951 until the 1980s, when it was acquired by the local Sikh community, who converted it into its current use, which is a Gurdwara or temple. Around 1950, the numbers of Methodists in the local community had reduced, and as they had a number of other churches in the town, the Cardigan Street one was surplus to their requirements and decided to sell the building. In 1951, the Welsh Congregationalists purchased the building from the Methodists for £4,000, which at the time was a very significant amount of money. And in today's terms, it would be around £150,000. But you might ask, what was the connection with Wales that resulted in a Welsh church being established in Luton, as the town was not known for having a large Welsh community? The reason was, in the time immediately before and after the Second World War, Luton became a destination for many peoples from across the United Kingdom and overseas who were looking for work. And this included many Welsh people moving from Wales to Luton. It must be remembered that at that time, Luton had numerous job opportunities, particularly in the manufacturing industries, with Vauxhall Motors being the major employer in the town, but also industries like Skefco, George Kent's, Electrolux, and many others. And like so many new communities coming to the town, the Welsh people brought their religion and faith with them and established a church, like the churches they were familiar with back home in Wales. I suppose it was a way of avoiding being homesick and staying in touch with their roots back in Wales. As the numbers in that congregation declined, the church closed and was acquired by the local Sikh community in 1983. Sanjar Kumar will now talk about the time that the Sikh community have used this building.
So my name is Sanjeev Kumar, and I am the General Secretary of the Shri Guru Ravidas Sangat, which is located on Cardigan Street in Luton. So the temple was bought in 1983. It was purchased through fundraising within the community. And the community is not so big in Luton. It is probably around 300 to 400 members. And those members are those that follow the teachings of Guru Ravidas. And Guru Ravidas is a particular saint who is significant to my community, and he is one of the co-scribes to the Sikh holy book, the Shri Guru Granth Sahib. We revere him as a guru, and the temple's is named after him. So the temple is called Shri Guru Ravidas Bhavan, which means place of worship. The temple was acquired through fundraising by the community in Luton, and also by other members of our community up and down the country. We acquired it in 1983, in April 1983, and inside it was as a church. We have changed how it looks inside so that it fits our needs and our worship needs as a community. One of the integral values of the Sikh faith is to have the concept of free kitchen, which is langar. Langar means that when you come and visit us, you actually are fed. Yeah, so a meal is provided to you, and that is actually to help you nourish your body. And when you pray or meditate, that you nourish your soul or your spirit. And if you're hungry, you can't really function. We have become really integral part of the community. We have opened our doors to the community. The community have come to know where we are. It is important to know that living and growing up in Luton, you are part of the fabric of Luton. So whether you are from one community or my community, we are all part of Luton, and Luton as a whole, as a town, is so rich in diversity, and we are part of this town. My family, my community have been here over 60 years now. So this is our home.
Our next project was to tell the story of the Luton hat industry. The making of hats in Luton started in the 1600s and grew and expanded. By the 1900s, it was estimated there was in the region of 1,000 factories operating in the town. By the 1940s, Luton was making 15 million hats a year, which were exported and sold all over the world. The 1950s and 60s saw the beginning of decline due to changes in fashion and a competition from abroad. Now there are just 3 factories still operating in the town. We have a video of Philip Wright, who owns and operates one of the 3 remaining factories. Philip will share his family history and talk about the decline of the Luton hat industry.
My name's Philip Wright. I run my family firm, Walter Wright.
The founders of the company, Walter Wright and Minnie Susan, his wife, first opened their doors 2 hours after their wedding
In 1889 at our current address, 29 Albion Road, Luton. Picture is of the Wright family. The adults in the middle sitting down are my grandparents, Walter Philip Wright and Minnie Susan. The children in that picture, they all went on to manage or run or own hat factories in Luton, to the extent that each week there was a competition, if you like, between the 7 hat factories to see who could produce the first 1,000th dozen of the week. So that's 12,000 hats per factory, times 7 per week. And it was the factory that my grandfather ran, which is the one I bought from my father in '99. It was that factory that usually won the prize each week. It hasn't changed. We use the same machinery. We have a few more tricks up our sleeve on how to make stuff, but essentially the machinery, the methodology, the handwork, it's all the same. How do you make a hat? You've got to make it by hand, and it ain't broke, so we don't mend it.
No.
So yeah, the hat trade declined. So from 1,000 hat factories in the early 1900s, 1,000 hat factories in Luton, that has now become 3. We are very much a disappearing craft. What can you do in a country that is beginning to enjoy the fun of hats again, but now the volume of hats that would be considered an industry, that volume is no longer made in England. And despite whatever some people hope or think that industry can return to the country, it's the knowledge, a knowledge that has been built up over hundreds of years, that has been handed down to the next generation. That knowledge isn't written in a book. It is by word of mouth, by doing, by seeing, by observing, by copying. And those people, they're gone. So the knowledge of how to make them, not just hats, anything, it would be difficult for industry just to suddenly come back to this country, because there's no one actually now who knows how to do it. So that's fine. It's what it is. We are proud of what we have done. We're proud of what we do. And we might probably be missed in years to come.
our latest project, The History of 100 Years of a School at Alexandra Avenue, narrated by existing students at the school.
There has been a school on the Alexandra Avenue site since 1919.
The Luton Modern School for Girls opened with the school buildings being ex-army wooden huts.
These wooden huts were used for the following 11 years.
The huts were eventually replaced by the existing school buildings in 1930.
The school then became the Luton High School for Girls.
The new school building was officially opened on the 5th of November 1930 by Her Grace the Duchess of Atholl MP DBE. The Duchess was the second woman ever to become an MP.
The Duchess arrived for the opening ceremony. The Duchess was presented with a golden key to unlock the door, but the door would not open, in spite of vigorous shaking. Eventually, the head teacher saved the day and called through the door, "Draw back the bolts." The door had been bolted on the inside.
When the new school building was first used in September 1930, there were 413 pupils on roll. In 1944, the government introduced the 11+ examination.
All children aged 11 had to take this exam.
Those that passed went to grammar schools. The Luton High School for Girls was a grammar school.
With the introduction of the comprehensive system in 1960s, the requirement to take the 11+ ceased.
The school became Denby High School.
The long-awaited school swimming pool was opened in 1934. The pool was open air and didn't have a filtration system. It was soon realized that this was not practical, and money was quickly raised to install filtration by the following summer.
In 1938, an extension was added to the school, and the number of pupils rose to 627. The new wing was built beside the swimming pool and contained a gymnasium block and a junior library.
During the war, there were lots of changes at the school. On the first day of term in September 1939, pupils had to climb ladders in the school hall and stick brown paper tape, known as scrim, across the windows in case they were blown in by a bomb blast.
During air raids, Miss Sheldon, wearing an ARP helmet, marshaled the girls by blowing a bugle. They then had to run across the sports field to the air raid shelters, where they sat on benches but couldn't lean back as the walls ran with water. Miss Sheldon took pride in the fact that the building could be cleared within 3 minutes.
During the war, the hockey pitch was dug up and used to grow potatoes, and an allotment was started in the school grounds to grow salad crops, onions, marrows, and etc., which were used for school meals.
In 1962, the new science block was opened, and also the transformed swimming pool, which had been converted to an indoor heated pool between 1960 and 1962.
The staff and girls were divided into 5 houses named after famous women: Boadicea, Grace Darling, Elizabeth Fry, Helen Keller, and Florence Nightingale. In 1934, 2 more houses were added, named after Mary Curie and Elizabeth Garrick Anderson.
Every year on Empire Day, pupils brought wildflowers to school, which were packed in boxes and sent by train to London. They were distributed to children who attended East End schools who had practically no opportunity to see fresh flowers. The school received thank you letters, and in 1930, one child wrote, "I only wish I could come to Luton and see all these flowers growing in the fields."
Miss Sheldon's school rules were strict. No girl must ever walk more than 2 abreast on the pavement. No girl must ever eat in the street or speak when using public transport to or from school. The rules were generally obeyed. Girls who did not obey could be made to wear a black ribbon of shame on the sleeve of their blouse.
Don't forget to remember as the pages of history turn. Don't forget to remember, or none of us ever will learn. Don't forget to remember, in the past our tomorrows are set. Don't forget to remember. Remember not to forget.